It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to discuss, have deliberations regarding Africa. It's always an honor. And many thanks to the ICD and the organizers of this conference. Most times we need clear-cut avenues like this to change narratives of people's cultures and affiliations. If you retain a very, what you call antediluvian narration, you have a perspective of people or perception of people that is not really healthy. And so you need a holistic perspective, and that is why such conferences are worth the while. I hope I can get my sorry. All right. So I'd like to get this comments, or my discussion would be, I hope it will be much more interactive and exciting, and it will be somewhat like a happy viewing for every one of us. I'd like to use this opportunity to also, in Germany here around 2 weeks ago, I failed to get it from my brother, Dapo. There was a party he went for, and they tried to, strangely speaking, Germans. I won't say strangely speaking, because eventually he's the biggest creative export to the world from West Africa. And they were at the bar, invited. They had a rendezvous for a friend's birthday, and this man was remembered. And he was appreciated, played by the band, a German band, played his songs that day. I hope I can, yes, good, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, all right, that's very good. A German band played his songs that day, and it was so heartwarming. And it shows that, I don't want to say whether we're appreciated more than we ever envisaged. We're appreciated more. I don't want to dwell on the narratives of development theories, globalist theories, dependencies theories, and all of that, and keep on going back and forth. But I want to illustrate who we are now. This is the map of Africa. Yes, this is the minimal differentials we can have. What I mean by minimal differentials is that Africa has about 3,000 ethnic groups and about 2,000 languages. So this is the most minimal differential we can have. Stratification, like separation, maps. And I won't overtly criticize it, political maps. Yes. Why? Because there are what you call perspectives as to why we have a rich diversity. And one of the sociological factors is that the maps also created the tons of diversity we have. One of the sociological factors, if you do sociological research, maps, you have having to delineate territories and all of that. Before you know it, another ethnic groups emerged, and there was this chronic issue of diversity. And modernist theories are quick to say that is what undermines Africa's development. dependency theories will also join their words with that. Because of the massive flow of diversity, there's no concerted effort towards development. But I feel that's barbardash. That's just dwelling in what we call the dreams of theories that are not practical. I love to keep theories aside for a while, but I look at them with my left eye, but I bring everything together. The compassions of people, the sensibilities of people, and the fact that development is centered on people, and interpret it from that perspective. Cultural diversity might be seen, yes, as what you call the multiple of different cultures, multiple of different ethnicities in numbers, population, plural nature of the African state, West African state, and it goes on. And it even delves into economics and gives you what you call the contradictions of economics as a result of diversity and all of that. But at a point in time, the UN said, no, cultural diversity, yes, it means a plural nature of a particular community, but it doesn't really have to be interpreted and seen that way. Cultural diversity also can be seen as appreciating the other person, just like Mark pointed out. The salad picture, the salad, appreciating that you're a carrot and recognizing that. And one of their striking words here is that as part of UNESCO in 2001, a legal instrument recognizes cultural diversity as common heritage of humanity. So that is part of humanity. I don't want to, just keep on saying these are the reasons why the Nok culture separated from the Benin culture, or the Nok culture separated from the Kanem-Borno Empire. It goes on and on and on. But it's a common heritage of humanity, and it was adopted by UNESCO as part of humanity. A common heritage of humanity as part of their international heritage practices. So we're going to be I'm going back. This discussion is going to be very interesting. So I'm going to be going through his voice and some of his songs that he sang and interpreting my work from there. So I said, think Africa, look and laugh. That's one of his songs. So this is the map of Africa. I gave a background of what it is. Debbie, can you help me interpret that? Are you okay? Yeah, you can. What? Can you say it loud? What's that?
It's a Yoruba word.
Yes.
It means Jane.
Yes.
Like
Eat teeth. It's one of his songs too. So that was just explaining concepts, eat teeth, explaining what you call very, very misunderstood concepts. Yeah, it's then no be gentleman at all. Who we are not actually stereotypes. We're not actually the most predictable people on earth. We fly. Hi, we fly. And look at our cities up there, West Africa. But history, our narratives are not just slave trade. We have been on the continent, West Africa, for about 10,000 BP. Activities in West Africa has been there since about 10,000 BP. That's beyond, that's archaeological evidence. That's beyond what you call your time estimates of BC and AD and all of that. So we have been there for a very long time. Yeah, we have had what you call as a result of conditions of weather, migration, all of that. We have also had changing patterns of economic development and all of that, hunting, fishing, and all of that. Man's basic instinct of survival. But don't leave us there. We also want to move. We're not gentle. Gentleman. We fly. And we have a whole lot of potentials. We have what you call geographical resources, natural resources, huge. At a point in time, the West African states, just recently, about 3 years ago, we had about the biggest GDP in the whole of Africa, about $700 million. Is it $1 billion or $1 million? The richest. We have a flamboyant, creative style. We are rich. In fact, someone from Lithuania was with me and discussing with me recently, and she was at the last conference, and she said she had read Wole Soyinka's book. Wow. And it was, she did it as part of her coursework in school. And we have a lot of creative patterns. Chinua Achebe's book is one of the first 1 to 10 most sought out books in the world, after the Bible, the Quran, and so on and so forth. But we're rich in our narratives. We're rich in who we are. We're rich in our potentials, even our geographical resources and all of that. Our vegetations are just primarily, we have over 7 vegetations in one region. It's rarely found. Rarely found. 7 vegetations. That means you can have a multiple of about 24 different types, or what you call stratifications, of plants and animals living in a particular region. In a particular region, because of 7 different types of vegetations. It's rare. It's rare. It's only in West Africa. Other parts of Africa, other parts of the world, they might have like 2 vegetations, 3. You might even have a monocultural vegetation and all of that. But it's not so with Africa. We have the Sahel, freshwater swamp. We have mangrove swamp. We have Sahel savanna, Guinea savanna. We have Sudan savanna. We have a wet and dry, forest, and all of it, 7 of them. Huge, isn't? Lady, how diverse we are. This is one of his songs, Fela's songs. He says, she go say, I be lady. What that means is that there's a complexity of our diversity, but it's beautiful. Come on, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. How diverse are we? Okay, in Nigeria alone, you have about 500 languages, 250 ethnic groups. West African region, you have about 1,000 languages. 1,000 ethnic groups, around 1,000 ethnic groups, and about 800 to 900 languages. Nigeria alone, you have over 500 languages. From the Culture Institute, I'm from approximately 521. We're just trying to be gentle about it. And so we have a plethora of diversity concerning the West African region. And it's really huge. But diversity is, just like I said, drawing my narrative from my perspective from what cultural diversity is, what cultural diversity should be seen at. It's a positive one for us. It's a positive one. About 395 million people in the West African continent. We are home to about 15 great empires, or regional empires. Like, I was a king. Come on. Huge empires. Some of the empires will drown Britain and Wales together. We drown it. How kingly can I be? So we had Kanembonu Empire, Oyo Empire, organized states in this region and all of that. Historic archaeology, historic craft and heritage. Iboku art ranging into the times of the BC, early times of the BC, before Christ. Wow. When I learned about that, I was like, how come? You have the terracotta art, knock art, Akan gold weights. They were doing jewelries long before you thought about it, before you thought about your fledgling Gucci or Guchon or whatever, you know? And you have about 1,327 generic polymark markers concerning languages and all of that. But adding all of that together, let's add everything together. We have what you call also our colonial heritage. We were colonized by 5 different nations. We were colonized by the British, colonized by the French. French has majority of the states there. By the Portuguese, colonized like 4 major. But United States had Liberia as a port for returning slaves and all of that. So that was an administrative human settlement. Then guess what? Germany. You guys also had a share of West Africa. Togo. The question I would like to ask, what are you doing with Togo now? West Africa and its development strides, okay? All right, Carry Me, that's another of his songs, and all of that. Enriching songs of Fela. You know, he had what you call the triangular use of his music. What was that? The triangular use of his music, of his vocation. Number 1, he had what you call sonorous voice. Number 2, he was prophetic. Number 3, he was developmental. So I'm just taking the developmental aspect of it. So ECOWAS summarily, I just wanted to, there are bilateral agreements different nations have made, different countries have made, but I'll just use the vehicle of ECOWAS, West Africa and its development in diversity strides. So ECOWAS captures it all. So we're embodied in ECOWAS, and I must say we must not overtly condemn or criticize the efforts of developmental agencies or rubbish. Some are really going through what you call the strain and the persistence of development. One of these agencies, one of these developmental agencies and multinational or regional organizations or confederacy is ECOWAS. Their aim is just almost like EU towards a united Africa, but they are taking it one step at a time. But basically, what they are trying to do is promote the unionism of people around the West African region. Let's see ourselves as beneficial to others. Let's see ourselves as beneficial to each other. Let's see ourselves as culturally diverse, yet mindful of development. That's what ECOWAS is trying to do. So they are getting high tariffs out of the way. And what's the origin of high tariffs? You guys just want us to pay all our ridiculous debts that we can't pay. So we have to keep high tariffs over the borders. And that's unhuman. Come on. Cultural diversity is to make everyone better, just like Marx said. And so they keep things that trigger underdevelopment, they try and remove it. Partnerships that work, they try and get into it. It's important that Western nations, a few Western nations are being very strategic about what you call the prospects of cultural diversity within the West African region. Recently, 2017, China had a mammoth agreement with Nigeria, what you call trade exchange, what you call a currency swap. Trade exchange. They are looking at the diversity and trying to invest and trying to come in and trying to form what you call a concerted and what you call fair perspective of development and trade. America saw the move of China and they came to ECOWAS and they signed a huge deal. What about $140-something million, towards ECOWAS goal of 2020. By the way, by 2020, ECOWAS hopes to roll out through their Economic Monetary Institute, hopes to roll out the West African currency. So these are huge attempts at that. But I've not found what Europe is doing. I don't know. Probably just having to deal with what you call migration issues, chasing us at the borders, arming our Libyan. I don't get it. I don't get it. How ridiculous. And you guys are the most proximate region to Africa. How can't you take advantage of the huge potentials in West Africa? You're waiting for China, you're waiting for United States of America, and we go on and on and on, and when you have migrants come here, and it's an issue to you. I don't understand. Britain, oh God, I don't even want to talk about them. At least Germany are opening their borders to migrants. What are you doing? So Palava, that's one of his songs too. There are issues we have had, security issues. The greatest points of controversy in the world are the greatest points of possibilities in the world. Just have that in your mind. If Nigeria is allowed to have 10 years of unfettered, uninterrupted development, Nigeria will affect the rest of Africa. And it will be better for all of us. Don't look at me with what you call a very owl-like kind of look. No, it will be better for all of us. Definitely. Now, having security issues, the Boko Haram threats, the Fulani herdsmen threats, and all of that, and you have insecurity year after year. We are just living the heritage of a divisive divide and rule system. So politicians take advantage of the divisive system to indulge in corruption, indulge in what you call political power at all costs. And you have the offshoots of all this, which is crisis, corruption, arming militants, and all of that. That was how we were bettered into what you call cosmopolitan public administration, divide and rule. And these divisive tendencies is what our politicians still want to maintain. And they try to maintain it at all costs. And it's dangerous. And you arm militants, you arm groups, they come up, they exploit our cultural diversity, and we don't have a chance at development. Leadership is the answer to this question. Shakara, our prospects. We have huge prospects. You just heard Mark say things like, we're the second. He was saying third. We're the second biggest film industry in the world, Nigeria. So we carry along Ghana. We carry along Liberia. We carry along Sierra Leone. We carry along other countries. huge population, huge market opportunities. We have a lot of hairs being sold in West Africa, huge hairs, Brazilian hair, just wonderful, beautiful hairs. By the way, applaud my wonderful, beautiful sisters there. They're just remarkable. I love beautiful looking sisters. It shows that's our shakara there. Our potentials are really great. We have shakara, men. We have shakara. Serious shakara. I don't even want to be like any of this. I'm so happy. Not squeezing your face, thinking about any other thing. You're just joyful. Of course, that's one of our resources. West Africa is home to the happiest people on earth. I just want to take one more look at these ladies. Good. So we have huge prospects, and it goes on and on. All right. Look at this. Solutions. That song, Water, you no get any me. Wow. I'm a fan of bonding. I'm a fan of love. I'm a fan of fairness. Let's play together. I'm a fan of respect. I'm a fan of let's invest in what we know is good to invest in. I'm a fan of let's bond together. We have different people, but let's come together. I'm a fan of let's promote common causes, shared culture. That is the basis for development, not the theories of frustrated scholars. Let's make man better. So, I can buy your arts and crafts. You can invest in me. I can buy your culture. Must acknowledge his documentation of what you call a rare aspect of our creatives, which many of us don't know. But I'm also pleased with his question. How many Africans were involved in it? Let's do it together. Let's do everything together. Europe, before China and America takes over Africa, get there, invest in their infrastructures, resolve that trains like this will move in African continents. The West African region, ECOWAS is already signing out. It has plans for what you call the trans water line that connects all West African countries together by rail and by road. Must we wait for China for those things to be done? Can't we have such wonderful German rail rolling through West Africa? It's possible. We will accept it. It's ridiculous. Good. That's what I'm going for. But it's all about seeing the other person as a viable means to a collective, peaceful and development of the whole earth. This is my summary of everything. Still honoring him. Put your hands together. 21 years after. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience or any thoughts on this topic? No?
Yeah.
I recently read a book, I don't know the title right now, it doesn't come to my mind, but it was about, I think it was a German journalist, and he's writing about the huge potential of Africa. And exactly what you were saying, he's saying as well. China is coming and building, now recently also in Eastern Africa, connecting Uganda, Rwanda to Kenya, building the biggest harbor in Mombasa and things like this. And it said, what is Germany doing? And it's really, I ask myself as a German person, what are we doing? We are sleeping, and thing is, of course, they say, okay, they have, then Siemens comes in and they make an offer, then the Chinese companies come in and they're cheaper, but it's also about, you know, the African governments to decide on who to work with, you know, and who to give the funds to, or who to work together on development, on streets and railways and harbors and all this kind of stuff. But the initiative must come from both sides, I think, and we should do this more because at the end of the day, let's say German quality is good and the people normally here, I think, are good people, and I would be happy to see that more, you know, but I don't know where to start. I mean,
I understand you, you know, but one of my recommendations here, I can't read through all because of time constraints, but there has to be a desire, you know, by most European countries, just like Mark also hinted earlier on. There needs to be a concerted effort to change what you call the way we are seen or we interact with the African governments. Change the narratives. Now, I'm going to go back to, definitely everyone knows it's better to have a German rail in Africa than a Chinese rail. But guess what? It's still fresh on our minds. Bretton Woods, IMF, there's still issues we're still contending with up till today.
the time is now, you know, because the people are standing in front of our doors and our borders and not in front of the Chinese borders.
That's
And
the
we
truth.
need to fight the causes why people are running away from Africa, because deep in their heart, they don't want to run away. They want to stay in their countries, you know.
Yeah, I really appreciate your common view on this, you know, but there is this apprehension about African governments. We are not done with Bretton Woods institutions. Okay, can you give us something that makes us to feel safe with you? Yes, we are coming into Europe, we're coming into your countries. Can there be no Bretton Woods agreement, World Bank agreements that indebts us for the next 50 years? Can you give us a development pattern that works? That is people-centered. Every day, every time, Africa is reeling over their debt crisis. The shadow of colonialism and what you call serious neo-colonialism, debt crisis is still, and that is why China has emerged. Because they are coming with a new trajectory of what you call investment, funding, and infrastructure, even though it's inferior. Any more questions? Yeah.
Europe is not sleeping. Otherwise, we will not be here. But when we talk about European investment, it's very focused on Germany and the Nordic countries. Portugal doesn't have the money to compete with China. Italy doesn't have the money to compete with China, or Spain or Greece. Otherwise, we get together and we made an investment in Africa, and that could happen. China and the United States are very dangerous investors. We know that. History tells us that.
Yes.
But now there is a thing here. We might not put in money there, but we are doing something for me it's better. Interchange of knowledge. And you see that. You see that I studied in Portugal for a while, and you see how many people come from the Portuguese-speaking countries to study there. There is a huge interchange of knowledge, huge. And that's how you build capacity. That's how you build communities' capacity. Helping, I don't like to use the word help, but with this interchange of knowledge, you can provide the necessary grassroots in Africa to develop for a sustainable development. It's not about putting money there and about Chinese people go there and do whatever they want. We all know where it goes the profit, and it's not good for Africa. Maybe 6 or 70% will go to China. We all know that. So it's not about. Unfortunately, we don't have the money to do that. Germany has. You guys. Germany has. But we are doing something better. We are building capacity, and for me that's important.
All right.
In Zimbabwe, in April, there was a huge happening, huge initiative by UNESCO, the university thing, like connecting more universities. For in this case, they're very connected with the World Heritage Convention. But that's how we build capacity.
All right.
But this interchange of knowledge is not about only about money.
Good.
But Africa is the gold resources. Africa is the future. Africa is not emerging. Africa is there. Africa is there. And the problem is that only for a few countries in Africa. There are others that they will continue to be poor.
Your contributions is also viable, but there's exchange of knowledge. I would like Europe to go the extra mile, make that knowledge work. A lot of scholars, people like me, have come to Europe, and of course, either we go back or we are retained. What are you doing with the human resource that you have trained? What's the next step? And this is why I said it's important that your perspective of investment is more humane. I have brought money to Germany. I've collected knowledge. What do you do with me that has your kind of thinking? What do you do with me? There's exchange of knowledge. I heard the other day, I don't know whether it's true, it says over 100,000 engineers in the UK are from West Africa maintaining the underrail system, underground rail train system. Over 100,000. In fact, I just want to be careful with my statistics. I have a friend who is running a brain and spine foundation. And she said, we have a problem with surgeons, neurosurgeons in Nigeria. Neurosurgeons, brain and spine. She runs a brain and spine foundation. And in Nigeria, in Abuja, the city's capital, she's confronted with a lot of cases of brain disorders. And you can only count barely 5 of them in the whole of Abuja. In the whole of Abuja is elitist. In the whole of Nigeria, there might not be more than 12. So you see one brain surgeon. His plane is landing, he's running here. He doesn't know whether he's wearing a singlet or a boxers. He's coming in to perform his surgery and he's going. Because the cases are huge. And guess what? We have the largest crop of brain surgeons in the United States. So what do you do with this exchange? As we have this exchange, because you go back there, we go back to countries and we're still caught up in the web of what you call the cynic ecology. I don't want to use the word cynic, the controversial ecology of underdevelopment. You go back there and there's no encouragement whatsoever. What's there in setting up cancer centers in Nigeria, manned by the people you have trained? What's there in investing hugely, telling some of the people and German engineers you have trained in Germany, moving there and starting up the train systems there? That's a better narrative of development and cooperation. It's not about the money. It's about your narrative. What are you giving to the people? Africa is just recovering from the Bretton Woods, the saga. The best option they had was China. We're not giving you loans. Let's do PPP. Oh God, 30 years of debt. China is the answer. It's a lie. There's more innovation that can come out, better innovations of development partnership that can come out from Germany, from Europe, from Britain. Whenever I think of Britain, I just get, wow. So more can come out. And because we are closest to you. And to stop the tide of migration and all of dying on the seas and all of that, illicit trade. Yeah, thank you.
Comes to my mind, we have a lot of conferences, trade conferences about different businesses. And why not to start an initiative where the Ministry of Trade of Germany, for example, is focused on inviting people from Africa to these certain conferences, different, there's
Mhm.
technology, there is tourism, there is food, there is chemical, there is whatever it is,
Mm.
yeah? And to bring people together, and then you can create something out of it.
Definitely. Sharing knowledge. I'm even enriched by your perspective. I'm enriched by.
Sharing knowledge
yeah.
is really then
Yes. Yes. I'm enriched. Sharing. I was just saying.
together where they can
Yeah. Sharing knowledge. I'm enriched by your perspective. I'm enriched by your perspective. Enriched by everyone's perspective, and everyone could actually come together, and we can create an environment where what you call productive knowledge is being disseminated, and all of that. But another thing is that one of the things with delving into bureaucratic issues, administrative issues, bringing the minister for trade from Nigeria, bringing the minister for trade for, I think I should be rounding up now, bringing the minister of trade for this thing, is that most of those developmental initiatives just stop at the airport. They go back home and they are caught in the web of what you call the ecology of underdevelopment. Now, why am I saying this is because Europe, as European Union, I know a lot of European countries don't have, should map out what they want in the region of West Africa and go there and propose it. Collaborate, cooperate with ECOWAS. What are your dire developmental needs? Let's get it. Let's work with you. Let's cooperate. Okay, your railway along West Africa, it can be done in 1 year. This is what we want. And we are going to use, we are going to manage the railway system. We're going to invest in it and manage it using your own people. Take back the funds. If you want to use the monetary style of what you call investments, fine. You take back the funds. You manage it and take back the funds. If you want to do what you call PPP, counterfeit funding, but I don't think that's not the best option, because China is doing it. There are other options. So definitely this is what we have to face. And it is high time that development and cultural diversity is seen, for the to help and develop man in general, and is for the good of all. That's my own point of view. Not for the good of one, for the good of all. That's what I have to say. So, yes, my greatest fan. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to respond to what you were saying
Yes.
about exchange of knowledge.
Mhm.
And I always get so skeptical when people talk about that, because how much of that exchange of knowledge is really exchange of knowledge, when I come from an education system in Africa where I've studied German history, where I've gotten into philosophy classes and I've studied Kant and I've studied Marx and I've studied a whole of these things, and then I come here, it's still the same thing. So I think that is where narratives of decolonizing the education system in Africa has become really critical, because then if we're able to study like African scholars, if we're able to study things that mirror our reality, then when we come to Europe, that's when we can really start talking about an exchange of ideas, because I think with the way that things turn now, it's just a reinforcement of ideas that we already know about Europe. There really isn't much of an exchange of ideas taking place. And I think it also goes back to why a lot of the people that get trained in Europe or that study in the States will choose to go there, because if you have been trained within a framework where there's already an advancement in some way in technology, and you graduate with your degree and you go to a country that doesn't even have the technology that you have studied, like how it really doesn't match. How is the person going to find employment? And I'm gonna ask you a question as well, to say you're just still complaining about, what are the Germans doing? What are the Europeans doing? what are the Chinese doing? I think the biggest question should be, what are the African governments doing? Why do we all the time have to place our development at the mercy of external actors? Like we say we have this diversity in culture, we have diversity in industries, we are rich in minerals, we are rich in oil. What are the rewards of that? Why do we always have to look for people coming from outside to help us? And then after they help us, we start complaining that they are requiring us to do A, B, C, and D. Of course they will require us to do A, B, C, and D because when they support us, it's their money, it's taxpayers' money. They should act in the name of national interest and self-interest as well. So I think we should start opening more conversations about what our African governments and what our African leaders can do for us because it's their responsibility.
Definitely. I was just highlighting and taking advantage of cultural diversity and development. That's why I was saying, what is Europe doing? Because, of course, definitely Europe has been there before. We are not separate from, we are not so far from each other. We have been there, a colonial heritage. Definitely, I also mentioned the aspects of leadership. There are countries who have done well. Libya, before the deposed leader, Gaddafi had the highest human capital development. Yes, Botswana, one of the highest to their countries that are doing remarkably well. Egypt had a controlled system that was working for them, management of resources. Morocco, even with their with their monarchical system, was also doing well on the verge of development, on the verge of advanced development. So you can count around 6 countries in Africa who are doing tremendously well. But of course, you always have the question of leadership crisis, which plagues the continent of Africa and West Africa. But most times, given the scenario, I don't hold the view of looking at the past, though, but there's what you call the psychological backlash. There's always this psychological backlash. Nigeria has never been allowed to function. Do you know the level of international conspiracy involved? The alternative economy in Nigeria is as big as the economy. Where's Russia coming to exploit crude oil? It's alleged, from the what you call the black market, and we have never really been allowed to function. But it is a psychological thing, and that's why leadership, just like you pointed out, the leadership question is something that is vehement, is something that is necessary to be answered. Once you have a good leader, you are able to have a new perspective, a new paradigm of development. South Africa, through Nelson Mandela, was able to shift the paradigm of development, gave leadership, to South Africa. But after him, we have also had the crisis of stability in South Africa and so on and so forth. And we have had real good leaders. Liberia Ellen just finished her tenure in Liberia, and there was stability to a great extent. She even manned the AU for a while, and there was stability to a great extent. Why I mentioned the European nations is taking advantage of cultural diversity and development to make everyone better. But the African continent, because we'll still grapple with the issues and the fallouts of underdevelopment. Migration, sickness, health issues, medical issues, we'll still grapple with that. And Europe will still be called upon. Definitely, you will still be called upon. So why not do it now and take advantage?
I think that at the moment, taking Zimbabwe, I work with a band from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
They tour a lot internationally, and the thing is, your current situation, your political situation in Zimbabwe with the elections, it was clear that the majority of the people want the opposition, and they want away from the ruling party and all this oppression and corruption, all of this. What did they do? They we're forcing actually and manipulating the elections again so they can keep the power. Now, my band, for example, they refuse a lot of times to talk about politics. Actually, all the years, they never in an interview mentioned anything about politics because they tell me when they go back to Harare, they will be arrested at the airport and taken to the crocodiles. Yes, I know Fela Kuti, for example, or there is many artists. Recently, Sheo Kuti was playing a concert tour and he was saying a lot of political statements. There are artists who talk about political issues and we should more and more work with them together because they are powerful and they spread the messages. In the end of the day, you know, it would be great if you have your population following artists and vote for the right people or, you know, empower them. But now look at Zimbabwe, even they had, now they're manipulating the elections again. So they're putting them back in power. But then I think maybe we should start private initiatives where people, you know, create more business opportunities or networks and so on and so on. But sometimes it's really difficult, yeah, with this greedy, evil people ruling these countries. And for me, they have to go, yeah, because it will not end if they don't go. And we are fighting a fight on another level with, as I say, music, art, messages, also to the people who might not be even so educated, can't read, can write, but they can listen and they can hear the stories and they can follow. It's important, but sometimes it's also tricky. So,
any cultural enthusiast will follow your line of thought because right now it's like a brick wall in Africa. To upturn some leaderships, some political leaderships, it's like a brick wall. We have an issue in Nigeria now, and we are wondering how we are going to vote that man out.
see?
Yeah, Jazz, I would like to mention something about what she stated now. Yeah, about the political leaders in Africa, which for sure is a problem, you know, like, but in Europe as well is a problem. But I think the main problem of the political leadership, you know, that you have in Africa, making a parallelism is the partnership. For example, if you go to, just to make it understand, if you go to a restaurant and you have a waiter who is stealing money, sometimes, especially here in Germany, you have the waiter who is dealing with the money directly with the clients, but you have another waiter who is in the bar and controlling the casino. So once you're there working for a long time, they do a partnership. In order to steal the money, at the end they share the benefits. So the person who is taking the money for the clientele is going to the bar and say a beer, but don't put it in the cassette. So at the end of the day, they say, okay, how much money is missing? I have 50 euros. Okay, 25 for you, 25 for me. And probably this is also what's going to happen in Africa. Maybe you have too many political leaders that, of course, they are corrupt, they are thieves, they are gangsters. But maybe because also in Europe we have undercover gangsters running countries, you know, that they are very nice because they have the suit, they go to the GA, they are polite people and everything is wonderful and beautiful, you know, and some of them are running the most powerful countries in the world. But they receive, you know, the African, they have a partnership with them. So, okay, that country in Africa, I don't know, Congo or any other, you know, okay, the leader is a corrupt, but it's good for me that he's a corrupt, because in the other hand, I can sell weapons, I can do this, I can do that, you know, the coltan is coming and, you know, I get the benefits. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing, you know.
Just like I said, the black market in West Africa is as big as the main economy, the alternative economy. So how will you ever get sanity? Weapons coming in unaccounted for. Where are they coming from? And all that. But just like to balance what has just been said, the issue also has to lie with what leadership can offer. If Europeans see the posture of a leader that has integrity, they won't come with what you call the baggage of the alternative economy. So we also have what you call to fix our own house with leadership and all of that. But there's one thing that affects leadership, and it comes to, that's what I've just pointed out. There's this psychological backlash. We are coming from a colonial heritage and all that. It has a way of drawing us back to all those corrupt practices, drawing us back to divisive politics of division, drawing us back to the stage of trying to manage that divisive politics through corruption. It keeps drawing us back. But leadership can solve that question, that aspect of development or underdevelopment.
And cynicism is another problem. For example, late last week or early this week, I don't remember now, there was, something very strong happening in Yemen. A lot of the children died and so on. Yeah, I think one of the main, responsible for that was Saudi Arabia. And it's funny though how for example, coming from Spain, the Spanish authorities, they say our condolences and so on. Especially, the visible head of that message was our king. And that's beautiful, but if you think about how you can be, I'm sorry for that, so a son of a bitch, when you are the main dealer of weapons to Saudi Arabia. I mean, you are sending condolences for the Yemenis case from the Saudi Arabia when you are dealing that weapon yourself.
I think this is one of the perceptions that makes African countries not to receive some trade and investment opportunities from some of these Western countries. They want to be comfortable with you first. There's no there's no ulterior motive. These are some of the perceptions. People look, okay, you're sending condolence to Syria, and you're the biggest weapon seller to, Saudi Arabia. And it goes on and on, these controversies and all those things. So if Europe comes and says, I want to make your railway better, they're already thinking, are these people going to bring weapons? Is there something at the back? Is there something at the back? So give us a clear narrative. That's all. Just show that we are one. Show that you want our interest. That's what the point I'm trying to make. We also have leadership crisis. That's put at that. And again, lastly, let everybody condemn what is bad. Let everybody condemn what is bad. Fulani headsmen, issues in West Africa, say it is bad, it is terrorism. Can Europe just condemn that? Openly condemn it? Can we just openly condemn what is wrong? Development is saying what development should be. Yes.
Leadership problems.
Yeah.
What happened? Africa has a problem, which is its cancer, is dictators. That's the problem. We are not talking about problems of leadership. We are talking about the culture of dictators, and that's the problem. And what they are doing is massive lobbying, as any dictator does, taking all the profit to yourself, and then of course countries have huge GPCs, but then in terms of the human development index, it's very low. Because where the money goes, it doesn't go to the community, it goes to the dictators, and that's the cancer of Africa. Why Europe is so economically successful for more countries than another, but it works. Because we are united. Africa is not united, that's the problem. You have dictators. Dictators don't want to be united. They have their national politics. That's the problem.
And that's why this work came, to correct that. We don't have a problem with unity if the issue of what you call development is looked at from a holistic perspective. We can be united. It's just leadership. I don't see any differentials. We have common values across West Africa. What I'm wearing now is one in Senegal, is one in Togo, is one in jollof rice, goes from Sierra Leone, Ghana. We can be united. There's no problem with that. Given over 1,327 markers, ethno-linguistics, we can be united. And that is, yes, I think. You want to ask the question?
I just wanted to add something.
Mm-hmm.
I think speaking about unity and then maybe voices coming together. Oh, by the way, I apologize. My name is Deborah, and I'm from Nigeria.
Hmm.
So speaking about unity, and then where African countries should have been or are right now, I would say that, well, considering our natural resources and the years of independence and all, we probably should have grown beyond where we are if we had more unity. But I would say that right now, I think our level of collective effort has really improved, and I would use my country, Nigeria, as an example. Now, in 2015, we had our last election, and everybody was complaining about the sitting president because the economy was going down, the currency was getting weakened and all. And then collectively, everybody knew that it was time for a change. We needed to put that government out. And it was the first time ever that a sitting president will lose an election, which had never happened. And I know that a lot, the president left, that's President Goodluck Jonathan, and then he was also praised. I mean, he got some international recognition because he didn't even make any attempt at opposing that result or going to the tribunal to say, oh, I think the election was not favorable. There was a rigging of the election and all. He accepted his defeat and he left. So I feel we, in terms of unity, we are coming together. We are making efforts. The AU 10 years back, I think the AU now is making an effort. Well, some of the goals, some of the time frames they have put against those, sometimes I feel 2063 years as the next goal for the AU seems like a very long time. But I think a lot of Africans are waking up. A lot of people in the diaspora too are waking up. And then people are trying to contribute their little quota. So for unity, we may not be there yet, but I think we're working towards it already.
Okay.
Can I just
Thank-
make a comment?
Yes.
Like, Deborah, so we feel like the context of Africa, do elections really work? Because I think it's just become like just this short to the international community that we want to drive some democratic process through elections, but do elections really work?
That's a very wonderful question. In fact, I've discussed in a structure with several people on how we can do away with elections, because it's really an issue for Africa. Yes, we might have, I'm not talking about what you call smaller unit elections, but I'm talking about what you call presidential elections, because that's the hub of fraud. The hub of fraud.
I'm a South African, I disagree.
Okay. Okay, I'm just, yes. Yeah, maybe, yes, maybe, I'm just talking, sorry, I apologize. Maybe in South Africa and some other countries. In a country like West Africa, with culturally diverse units. Now, why I'm saying this is because, yes, elections can work, but if you look at your system and you're not getting the benefits. Recently, an election held in a state in Nigeria, and from the onset, I knew the party that will win. And the people didn't want that party, and they won. So how big is such fraud? So these are some of the issues, brandished, just brandish candidates and impose them and all of that. So there are systems. Every country has to look, depending on how culturally diverse you are, every country has to look at what best fits for them. I think it's more disadvantaged. It's more of a disadvantage for Nigeria to hold a huge presidential election than it's an advantage for me, because it has been ridden with corruption and huge fraud. Votes of people don't count. Thank you.
I wanted to say another thing where you said that dictatorship is the problem, but I want to take your topic where you said that the dictator has no power without a partner.
Good.
And the partner, who are the partners? As you mentioned, Congo laptops, computers, iPhones, da da da. So our consumption, you know, is also part of feeding the system. And it also reflects Western Africa. There is a massive population now. If you're looking at problems of plastic, all these things, consumption of people. So we all have to kind of change our behavior and our thinking and be more reflective about the things we do and the products we buy. Yeah, Nestle is a good example where we say, okay, they go into South Africa, take the water from the region. The people don't even have running waters in their houses, but they sell it in plastic bottles, and it lands in the ocean in the end of the day, and the money goes in their Swiss pockets. So the whole, and it's not only an African problem, it's a worldwide problem, but I think, you know, to start it from, let's say, with all of us, we can maybe contribute a little bit and say, okay, where we can be more aware of what we do, what do we eat,
Good.
where do we
Good.
buy,
Good.
and so on. And I feel like Africa has huge potential. There is big fields, you know, where you can start to grow food and so on. And yet the soil is not poisoned by all these Monsanto and so on and so on. But it would be important that when it starts to grow now, you know, and there's a very nice Facebook page of African businesses where they make little videos and they show, and one guy started with $100 a mushroom farm and things like this. But it's also too important that these things, when these small businesses grow, that they grow on a sustainable way and it was a mindset of, you know, where do we want our world to be in the future? And as I say, it's also our fault that we can give power to these dictators, because our companies, who whatever they produce, you know, take it from the oil, the petrol we use, the weapons we produce, and so on, the computers we use, we are also part of the system. So it's also maybe something to consider.
That's it. I'd just like to end with this. Development, yes, is local. But again, it is motivated by national perspectives. Overtly, development cannot be carried out alone by locals. So, maybe I have a word with Mark on that. Development is local. It has its initiative grounded locally. But again, it is motivated by national, the supranational. And it has a wider reach globally. So it's not just for one person. Everybody is involved in development. We also acknowledge and respect your cultural diversity and the uniqueness of each and every individual. Thank you very much.